Hello,
Hey,
hello, welcome to the stream.
yeah.
Uh,
Hi. So I had to, I think I'm on your Twitch right now, and so I'm gonna mute the audio from the Twitch, I think.
yes, definitely. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you'll be hearing me at a terrible lag.
yeah, and I think it's like a maybe 10 seconds or something like that. So that'd be interesting to to see how it works. I haven't done something like this, but yeah. Um, thanks for agreeing to do this. It'll be fun to get the chat going and
Absolutely.
things like that. And I had a pleasure talking with you. What? God, oh my gosh, is that yesterday?
It
No,
was
is it
Monday.
already?
We skipped one day.
Oh my gosh. Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah, time goes so quickly now.
All right.
With that, yeah.
I know what you mean. But yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, welcome to the stream. I guess if people, how would you like to be addressed? Just as Rich?
Yeah, Rich is fine. Yeah. So Rich and I'm at York University, a professor doing some research and chats with content creators, specifically like video game creators, and was just enamored, Gabriel, by your work from TOJam and um, the works you have been doing with Worlds Within Worlds, and just fascinated by how much time you put into showing your work. It's really amazing because you do it 5 days a week, right? Monday through Friday,
Yeah,
typically.
usually that is my goal, is to be streaming Monday to Friday, 2 hours a day.
Excellent. Yeah, and I don't know if we touched on this when we spoke because we just sort of first time we met each other when we spoke on Monday for a bit, but having that 2 hour block, like, what does that uh, what does that do for you? Just to kind of have that steady, 2 hours where you're doing streaming and kind of doing this development stuff in public.
Yeah, so the thing that's really beneficial about keeping myself on such a rigid schedule is the fact that um, it means that however small the steps that I am accomplishing on any given stream are, it's really giving me an opportunity to just keep making steps forward. Because I definitely have been, I've gone through various phases, like years of my life, where I just feel like I'm not getting very much done, not working towards the dreams, the hobbies, the whatever it is I really want to be making. And I find that taking time out to participate in the stream, and the fact that I've actually got an audience here, and I feel somewhat accountable to maintain the consistency of the stream, to be here, I guess, in some small form as an entertainer, but also um, as a part of this community. And it's a great opportunity for me to mostly focus on actually working towards the development of my own games, but also just participating in this conversation with chat and with other game developers when I'm doing interviews. And so yeah, it's been a very positive thing for me, that I figured, even if I only have like one, two viewers, in this case we're up to five, which is great. Hello everyone. Um, but I feel like even if I had next to nobody watching me, I'd still keep doing this, specifically
Mhm.
because of the fact that it's affording me this time to work on my art.
Yeah, and imagine, like, I mean, I'm kind of a morning person, so I admire you doing this stuff at night. and there's something about feeling a little empty if I don't actually do it about the same time every day, like about 9:30, 10. I'm at my desk, and then maybe till 1. I don't know. It's just that I feel that flow, and I feel empty if I don't do it, like I miss some part of my day. And for me, just having that routine is uh, quite nice and productive. Something
Absolutely.
about just being in the same desk at the same time. Yep. What else did I want to ask you about? Yeah, just this reminds me of never have 0% days lesson of a GDC tech. That's what Dr. Tronik's saying. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but I'd love to hear more about that. Like, but I mean, you're working a day job too, right, Gabriel?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I guess from the context, I'm sort of inferring that like you're always chipping in at least 1% on the total project on any given day. Like even if like never let a day go by without something getting done on the project. And maybe Dr. Tomic can affirm that because I haven't seen that specific GDC talk myself. But to answer your
Yeah, it sounds
question,
fascinating.
yes, I do. I do have a day job with Bellwood Studios, which is a startup company here in Toronto, and we are
Oh,
working
cool.
together to make Project Mayor. And I'm, on a contract with them 4 out of 5 days a week. So my day is spent working on that contract, making a game called Project Mayor, which is a city simulator cross political management style game. So
Oh,
you've got to build and manage a city, and yeah, that's what I'm spending my day on. That's how I earn my living, and then in the evenings is when I have time for the streams. So I keep busy for sure.
yeah. I mean, is there some kind of cross training you get from doing, just to use that metaphor, from doing your day job and then doing these kind of independent projects with Blue Screen?
Yeah, I would say so. The My role on the project with Bellwood Studios is a UI developer, and I'm assisting the
Hmm.
with the game design on the project. The artist at Bellwood Studios, he's the one really leading the charge on the design. He's the one who came up with the original idea and who is very passionate about these like management style games. So I'm there to be a sounding board and to talk things over with him. Um, but other than that, the actual like development lessons that I'm learning in Unity, especially as I'm transitioning over to using Unity for my own professional projects, yeah, there's a lot I'm learning from working on that project that I'm finding applicable to my own projects.
Mm, excellent, excellent. Um, I know on Monday we talk a little bit about this or much about it, but we were talking a lot about worlds within worlds and some of your processes behind that. But maybe it's worth repeating for here. What kind of like software and tools have you used for worlds within worlds? Like what's behind what we've been seeing
Yeah, for
uh,
sure.
on the screen?
So what I'm the software that you see me using right now, this is Game Maker Studio version 1.4. And it's not the most current version of Game Maker Studio that is available, but it's the one that I like using best. And I like it because it's very easy to use. The syntax, everything is pardon me.
Oh, good. Mhm.
Mm. I'm so sorry for having this awful tickle in my throat. um,
It's allergy season. It's how.
wow, stuff just it's like a little speck of dust landed in the back of my throat. I'm like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
Desperately trying to hit the mute button on the stream before I coughed. Sorry about that.
No, of course.
So, syntax, Game Maker Studio, I love it. Super easy to use. It has its own built-in image editor. So when we're looking at worlds within worlds, kind of uniquely, a lot of it is made within Game Maker. Because if I look at the player, that's the stand. There's nothing really to show there. But if I look at the walk cycle, here we go. The entire player walk cycle has been drawn within Game Maker Studio because
Oh,
it's a fair bit better than Paint in terms of its functionality. And yeah, so because of the fact that this game is pixel art and it's sort of two-tone, it was very easy for me to draw pretty much everything in Game Maker. For the sound effects, I use BFXR, which is a free tool that you can find online. You can use to sort of generate 8-bit sound effects. Music, I've mentioned this plenty of times on stream before, but the music is made by Mark Sparling, who is a fantastically talented composer. who has made music for this little game right here that I made, and the most of the music that you're hearing in Worlds Within Worlds are from his daily collections, and these are songs. He made over 1,300 of these over the course, like just one day at a time. So talk about
Oh yeah.
never missing a day. I appreciate everyone the various blessings and for all the effing hacking fit there. But yeah, so Mark also most recently did the soundtrack to A Short Hike and Shantae and the Seven Sirens. So keep an eye out for Mark. He's going to be making his way up in the world stage of music composition. But he's generously allowed me to use his music for the not just like pretty much any jam game. Like if I actually release any of these games, then I'll work out an actual paid agreement with him. But for now, I just bought all of the songs. I bought his entire discography, and I'm just using them. The game is free, so he lets me use the music for free as well. Other than that, tiles also drawn. Background art is also drawn within GameMaker, and then there's no real writing to be spoken of, but any other like planning and stuff I'm just doing in Google Docs. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we talked about this a bit as well, that in terms of writing, that Worlds Within Worlds on the surface doesn't have much writing.
Yeah,
but it seems like in the background there's a lot. And you mentioned that Google Doc. Like, I know there might be some sort of I don't know, let's say confidential information on this set of docs. But yeah, like planning doc. What is that? What do you mean by that?
No, not really. It's just a it's a list of like tasks that are yet to be done and levels that are yet to be made and things to implement in the menu. Other than that, I've got some of the tasks I've navigated over to using Trello because I haven't used Trello before and I wanted to give using Trello a shot. So yeah, it's just this isn't even the complete design document for Worlds Within Worlds, because there are this game, because Worlds Within Worlds and Infinite Descent and the game that it was before it became either of those jam projects are all made within the same engine. There is much more in that design document. But yeah, so the design document is going to include things like a comprehensive list of every single enemy in the game. SK Vader is commenting on the goats jumping on pogo sticks, and that is because the game, it is a tradition of TO Jam to include the goat on a pole. So I included it as a hazard that is bouncing its way around one of the levels. So that was a fun way to include it. Worlds Within Worlds. I think it's in one of the promo images. Yeah. So these goats that you got to dodge.
Okay. I love that. Yeah, and I mean, I know you've done several jams, and you've done most recently you did TO Jam, and one thing I was fascinated by this is that you're continuing it beyond the jam itself. It strikes me as and kind of what your reaction is. It seems like sometimes game jams, you finish the jam and then it's just that's it. The game's there, it's tried. Is that sort of like is it a mix between what developers will do? And in your case, you're continuing it and you want to continue it for, I think the other day you were saying another level or so, right, for this? And then...
Yeah, so I would say that developers tend to approach their jam games in a few different mindsets. There's the people who are just making it for fun, for a passion project, maybe even a portfolio piece someday down the line. And when they're continuing work on a jam game, it's because they want it to be a more complete version so that if anyone sees it in the future, it'll reflect well on their work as a whole. There are the people who just say, like, no, it was a one and done. It's on to the next big new thing. Very few people who played your jam game when it first came out are going to care about seeing the latest version of it now. So even if 1,000 people played your jam game in the context of the jam, maybe 10, maybe 5 of them will come back to play it when you post the version 1.1 update. You know, it depends. Like those, you're going to have to gauge your own audience on that. So that I think that's why there's this precipitous drop off that most people are not going to bother to do a sort of a 1.1 version of their game because it's strictly not worth it for the amount of eyeballs that are seeing it. And then there are people for whom their jam projects have gone so well that they are continuing to develop it further as a commercial venture. And the funny thing is, I don't fall into any one of those 3 categories that I've just outlined. I think those are like the 3 broadest categories you're going to see. It's mostly that this game is like so much of it is already built in terms of the art, the content, the levels. It would be a shame for me not to turn this into something playable, something that is a complete product, because it's been a project that I've been tinkering with on and off for a number of years. So I think it, deserves to see the light of day. And even if I do end up rebuilding the engine in Unity with a better frame rate, with a more reliable control scheme, and any number of other improvements, I think this version is still far enough along that it's worth releasing in some capacity. So it's kind of a little bit of all 3. Like, I acknowledge that this is not necessarily going to do particularly well commercially, but I do want there to be a finished version of it, and I am continuing to work on it. Also just because I really like designing levels. It's a fun thing for me. So yeah, it's actively enjoyable to work on.
Yeah, that's and again, just seeing you actively do that regularly on stream has been just enlightening. When you were working through the end of one level the other day, and I was in the chat. We were talking about it. It seems very collaborative. And you're getting that feedback from your audiences. It's interesting. And again, like with Worlds Within Worlds, this is, as I think we were talking about, one of the first times you've done a game that doesn't have much text, and it's pretty visual in a lot of different ways. Can you speak to that? That kind of choice to sort of downplay, I guess, the writing angle, whether it's in the tutorial or some other capacity, the story, things like that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so if we look back at least all the games that I have listed on here publicly, there's some older projects that I've since hidden or scrapped. If I was making a small arcade game, like I'm no stranger to making games without narrative. I tried in a pretty significant way for Robo's World, the Zarnok Fortress, which is the big collaboration that I did with the studio that is now Bellwood Studios. This is the artist that I'm working with now. He did the art for this game. His name's Will Valley. And when I was working on a project of this scope and this scale, it's like, okay, I want to try and deliver on a story. I want to try and at least have like a basic Mega Man complexity level plot for a action platforming Mega Man style game. And for as much effort as I put into it, I didn't feel like it really added anything to the game. It felt to me like people launched the game, and then there's this huge cutscene with all these like fancy artwork that Will put all this effort into, and then people just held the button and skipped it. It's like, oh, okay, I guess you don't really care about the context of why you're doing this. So then I tried to create a series of games, including Stroke for last GMTK Jam, The Little Brazier for the most recent Global Game Jam, and then Christmas with Uncle Tom for one of the more recent Game Maker Community Jams. And these games were entirely about a narrative, delivered through dialogue, and these were a focused effort on having a game that was entirely about the narrative experience, where with little to no gameplay other than navigating a character around and making some simple choices in dialogue. So then when I came back to working on Infinite Descent and Worlds Within Worlds, the idea there was to just say, like, okay, you know what? I could add a story to this to try to give it some grander context. But I think for now, it's going to be fine to just focus on the gameplay. I'm going to try to let the game, let the level design and the play of the experience speak for itself. And I'm not going to worry about trying to explain, why are you in this fantastical world collecting leaves? Like there's a reason and there's a motivation in the back of my mind, which I hope to explore in another game someday. Like that'll be the game that I make in Unity if people enjoy this well enough. But yeah, for this one, I just figured, you know what? We're just going to have some fun making some super short levels that are going to add up to a, good old classic platforming experience where you don't need to worry too much about the story other than, hey, here's the objective. Go have fun.
Yeah. And you said you do UI
Yes.
at your day job, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you also do like user experience, usability testing, things like that?
I do it to some degree. The thing is that I'm not designing the UI myself. I'm implementing it.
I see.
The artist Will, he has a lot of experience with creating some really visually impressive UIs, and he's handling all the actual development. Sorry, I guess I should say he's creating mock-ups in Adobe XD, and then I am using those as measurements and exporting images from them and bringing it all into Unity to make it functional. And then we're working through it together to say, like, okay, and then how's this element going to look when it's highlighted, and how you click on it, and what's this menu going to lead to, and pop this open and here and there. But I will definitely say that from my own perspective, yeah, like UI UX is a huge concern for me. I want to make sure that those are elements of the game that I'm getting right. And building out a UI for displaying like a chat is something that I've done to a basic extent in the narrative games that I made, but I feel like is going to be much easier to do in Unity because I've worked on stuff like that. So part of why I figure like I'll leave the story until I'm working in an engine where I feel a little more confident about getting it actually implemented down the line. Like it'll be a better user experience to be reading through the text in an engine that is a little bit better built for displaying these kind of UI elements.
Interesting. Yeah. When people were playing through Worlds Within Worlds during TOGM, were there insights that you kind of gleaned from on the user experience side as you watched, other streamers play, or you've seen, you've passed it on to folks that might, I guess, kind of be revelatory in relation to it being a very visually rich game, not having like that, those sort of like reviews of how to do certain things on the screen or story or anything like that.
Yeah, a lot of that came from when the previous iteration, the version that I call Infinite Descent, because this was submitted for Ludum Dare 48, and there were a lot of comments about people talking about like where they got stuck, where they had trouble with it. I didn't get to watch a whole lot of people try it for myself, but I was looking at all these comments, and even some people went incredibly in depth. Somebody here, I think it is just this one image. Yeah. It was this individual user here, Corfi, who talked a lot about how they would prefer the wall jump to feel, and yes, exactly, Escavator. Yeah, like the wall jump is something that I put a lot of time into tweaking, based on the feedback from people trying it out for the Ludum Dare iteration. And then by the time that I got to TOJam, there wasn't too much that I felt was necessary to tweak. There were definitely a few things, and I definitely want to do some more classes on actually getting in front of people and seeing recordings of them playing it and seeing where they get stuck. But I would say by and large, people are having difficulty with the part that I'm expecting them to have difficulty with, but in the right way. They're not getting confused. They're not failing to understand the basic mechanics of the game. They're just being presented with a challenge and then finding that challenge challenging. So it's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So you're punishing people is what you're saying.
I would say that I'm deliberately creating these sort of obstacle courses, and that the obstacle courses are meant to have a challenge to them, because you want a game to feel like there are consequences. You want to when you're playing a game of this style, of this kind of like retro challenging platformer, you want there to be these stakes. Like, if I'm not careful, then I die, then I lose, I have to restart. But even then, I shy away from saying the fact that I'd be punishing anyone, even if you sounded like you were definitely joking when you were saying it.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
But I do pride myself in the fact that there are frequent checkpoints, because this means that you don't have to worry about repeating progress in the game. You always have the opportunity to leave the level at any given checkpoint, which means you're not playing from point A to point B. You're trying to collect the leaves, and every time you touch a checkpoint, you are caching the leaf that you've collected. So you're kind of constantly moving forward, constantly making progress. And there's also no bottomless pits. There's also the sentiment that rather than there's this a trend in some of these like ultra difficult games that you might have a health bar and you touch something and it does like 2 points out of 10 of damage, or you touch a spike and you die instantly, or you fall off a bottomless pit and you die instantly. I like to think of the game that I'm working on as having like an equal opportunity sort of situation where everything is a one-hit kill. There's an understanding that I have designed all the environments such that it's possible to get through them without touching any of the hazards ever. And there's never a question of, I'm sorry, did you get to this part and you only have 2 hit points? Well, too bad, because you have to take damage to succeed. I don't think the best games that are out there are ever designed with that sort of thing in mind. I think it's a lot of fan projects that take into account. It's like, you got to this part in my custom Mario Maker stage. Here you have to damage boost to get across these spikes. No, I think that it's only sort of amateur projects that rely on the player taking damage. And the best games out there are designed so that you can get through them without taking hits, even if it's really, really hard to do so. But I'm just kind of making the acknowledgement of like, well, this entire game is built on the premise that any single thing will kill you. So trust me when I say the stages are exhaustively designed to make sure that you can get through them without hitting any of the hazards, because that's your only shot.
Yeah. Do you want to show us an example in Worlds like that represents that? I think that's such a fascinating idea.
Let's see if the game will
just
run
put you
right
on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There are Dark Souls hit runs, as Dr. Trump points out. I'm not sure if the game's going to compile right now because I was in the midst of working on something. It might give me some weird error somewhere, but maybe it'll work.
Okay.
Okay, so if I get into level 1 here, so there are these pits of fire here in this level, and the very first one that I'm introducing to the player is I wouldn't consider this to be too difficult to jump over. And then this one is just like, it's basically the same, except it's one wider. And then this one here, you've got to jump up and over it, and then you end up on the next screen. There's immediately a checkpoint here so that you bank that progress. And then you've got to make, yet another 2 jumps, and there's immediately another checkpoint. And then yet another 2 jumps, and then you're back to the beginning, and there's yet another checkpoint. So this is what I mean in terms of the sort of the frequency of checkpoints in the game. Is that it's specifically designed to be, um, if you ever lose progress, it's not very much, and most of the time, the um, even if the individual enemies here will kill you, like it's pretty easy to jump on their heads. Like um,
Mm-hmm.
in general, I'm also being reasonably generous with collision volumes. I can actually go back to level 1 to illustrate that. Uh, if I get over to here, you can see that I can actually stand on this platform right next to the fire. Now, if you're actually in this pit, you die. If you fall into the pit, you die. But otherwise, you can actually like brush up pretty close to the fire, and it won't kill you. And that's all part of my idea to um, try to be a little more generous towards the player in terms of, you know, if you touched a hazard, you were really overlapping with it, and that counts as a death. But nothing short of that. I'm not trying to be too strict. Let's see, Dr. Tronic, having many checkpoints is so good is it makes taking hits or failing more like learning and less frustrating. Exactly. I'm trying to reduce the frustration uh, and the amount of times that you have to repeat content because, I wouldn't be surprised if other games out there would expect you to play through an entire level like this one here without a single checkpoint in it. And it
Yeah,
just makes you more stressed out because you've got so much more on the line. Like it's not actually harder, it's just more stressful because you feel like, oh geez, I'm
yeah.
gonna lose all this progress and have to do it all over again.
Right. And I think to Dr. Trunk's point too, yeah, I was sort of on the same wavelength. I think that you're making failure more manageable and enjoyable because you could just you got a quick checkpoint, you try it again. So in other games like Souls, you get so far, and you may play that level like 100 times or more. It's been hours and hours on it, but this is doing 100 times in a game like this with frequent checkpoints seems a lot less emotionally draining and defeating. Like, yeah, failure is kind of fun in a way. Um, yeah, super cool. I was gonna say about that. Me- Well, I mean, now total, how many levels do you anticipate having for Worlds Within Worlds?
So
Remind
right
me.
now there are 3 worlds in the version of the game that is out there, and you can play. And each world has 5 levels in it. And then right now I've just finished World 4,
Mm.
so that's brought the total up to 20. And I want to at least finish World 5 and see where I'm at with that. So there's going to be at least 25 levels in the game. But if I still feel like I have more ideas and more sort of like elements of the game that I want to play with, like that was one thing you can see on here is that World 1 is introducing a lot of the basic mechanics of the game. World 2 is jellies, then a puzzle, a challenge involving wind, then another challenge involving jellies, then another challenge involving wind, and then a challenge involving jellies plus wind. And then same thing with World 3. It's the little ghost blocks you have to hit and then jump on them before they fade away. Then it's the little curl ups. Then it's Ghost Blocks 2. Then I took the goats out of here and moved them into a different part of the game. But then you've got the sort of challenge of the curl ups and the ghost blocks. And it's the same thing. World 4 is introducing one element, then introducing another element, then playing a harder version of that of each, and then seeing how those two elements interact. And it'll be the same with World 5, and it might even be the same with another world, as long as I can continue to come up with these sorts of elements that are fun on their own and then are fun in combination with one another.
Yeah. So it's 25. You say 25 levels?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, we were talking just a minute ago about uh, repetition, right? If you have these frequent checkpoints, and I'm sure some of us we've I don't want to say wasted. We've committed a lot of hours to games that involve lots of retries and errors. Do you have an idea of how long you hope folks will stay within the game and like I guess from start to finish, commitment wise?
Like whenever I'm working on the game, I'm really thinking about it in terms of the sort of average play experience, and then I'm thinking about it in terms of
Mm.
the speedrun experience. And it was a
Oh,
lot of fun to see uh, somebody as part of TOGen actually speedrunning the version of the game, which for the 3 worlds that are available, I think he was able to complete it in just around 3 minutes and 12 seconds. And that lines up pretty well with my expectations that any given level might take you like as few as 6 seconds or 10 seconds. You can clear the individual levels incredibly quickly. Um, if you really, time out your jumps and for those who want that like high level experience, I can definitely demonstrate this, but any game, every single level is designed to be played with zero hesitation in mind. So if I hop into that very first level that I showed off, actually switch my feed here,
yeah,
and
sure.
yeah, there we go. So this level that you saw me playing through kind of cautiously before, if I just, this is a level you can complete pretty much by just holding to the right and jumping at the right moments. So you can complete this very optimally, and that's why the level loops on itself. So you end right back where you're beginning. Here's the level with the goblins, and if I get my timing right, then I can just bounce off all of them like that, bounce off of this guy, and then the real trick is if you bounce off that last one, it'll get you up to the top there. And yeah, so you can complete these levels incredibly quickly if you really know what you're doing. And it makes it kind of hard to talk and play that level of competency at the same time. But anyway, each level is built with that sort of thing in mind for those who.
Yeah, that's. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, for those who are seeking that level of challenge.
Yeah, and that's super interesting to kind of decide with two player tracks in mind. That someone could do it a little more cautiously or in a speedrun like way.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
clearly do it. Yeah, yeah. That's. I'm learning all the secrets of these levels now. It's gonna be nice when I get to
Knowing
play
it
it
is
more
one thing,
fully.
executing is the other. So
All right.
you'll find that some of the tricks involved with actually completing levels at uh, on their sort of speed run routes are much more difficult to execute on. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a matter of confidence. Sometimes it's a matter of knowing that, like, if you start this level, you just have to hold to the right and then time your jumps, and that'll be it as far as timing is concerned.
Yeah,
Um,
and like, see, to me, that's so much more enjoyable than when I was. I mean, since we're talking about like Souls,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes in the matter of pain, I would just run through as fast as possible and avoid everything because I was
Mhm.
so sick of doing it a million times. But like, this seems, yeah, to me, just like a fun way of going about it. That yeah, like it's short, it's enjoyable. It doesn't feel like you're hacking it in any way as a player. You're just that's what the mechanic affords you to do, or the game does. The other way, I just felt like it was unsatisfying because of how much time sink you'd put into it. I mean, it's a great game. Don't get me wrong, but like, I just yeah, like as taking hits and doing whatever you could just to barely survive a level just wasn't that gratifying.
you know,
So
really my main goal is I'm thinking about the fact that if anyone's going to replay this game, it's because they want to, not because they died and they're being forced to.
yeah, absolutely. Wow. Um, do we still have time for a couple more questions?
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. Tronic says never finished a Dark Souls game. Love it. So this is something where I sent you a couple questions. I know
Yeah.
we were talking about this leading up to this week, but what do you think's been the most pleasurable part about developing Worlds Within Worlds so far? I mean, and I'm particularly interested in it because when I got acquainted with your work, this is the game I saw. But yeah, like we could talk about other ones that you find um, or moments you find particularly pleasurable. But yeah, for this one, like what's brought you the most pleasure
I think
on the development side?
it's easily hands down the level design. Like um the iterative nature of my development of like uh you know having something in my mind as okay, I think I can construct a fun challenge using this kind of layout and this kind of hazard. If I put this here, put this there, and then I'll go into my list and I'll say, oh, I could use one of these. And what if I put it together with one of these? And, then I'll try the game out and I'll end up like maybe it works, or maybe I actually discover something. There have actually, been highlights that I've saved on Twitch of moments where I try something, and I'm surprised. I'm surprising myself when I'm doing these things. I'm realizing like, oh, I didn't think this was possible, but it actually is. Like you can make a jump from here, you can slide off the wall and then jump at the last second, and you can clear this, and that seems really hard, but it's also really satisfying to pull it off. So it's fun to discover things about my own game as I go through and build it, and I can really rapidly make changes to the level. Like what you're seeing now is kind of like a wireframe of what a level that was level 1. Here's level 2 with the goblins, and the game decorates itself when I run it. So all I have to do is place these collision volumes in, stretch them out to whatever size I want, and all the decorating happens automatically when I hit play. And the spawn points, everything is pretty clear and easy to build. So I've made it very easy for me to build the game, and that's made it a lot of fun to work on.
Do you have, I guess, levels that you've archived but haven't actually made it into the game? Like, I'm just thinking about, if you have so much fun kind of iterating in this level design, is that, I guess, part of your process is just having this. For me, like, I work in Scrivener a lot of times, and I just have scraps of chapters that are just probably won't go anywhere unless someone hacks my computer. But I find that like just at iteration, I like to keep it like it's almost like the garbage. I like to think of like it could be productive at some point.
Yeah, absolutely, and I do. I have said this as well on stream, but like this what I have open here is and it's kind of obscured by my webcam in the corner there. But there's a massive list of all the levels that I have in the game. That are in the engine, I should say. And some of them are scrapped, some of them are original versions of others that I've redone since. But there is a solid, like, I think I had built a full 20 levels in this game already. And I think some of those are great levels, but I'm holding myself to a different standard now that I'm rebuilding them for Worlds Within Worlds. So I'm literally taking ideas from these original levels. So let's open up Bouncy Jellies. Okay, so here is, let me compare and contrast these two here. Jellies. Nope, not that one. So I've got, not full screen, please. Let me just side by side these. So up here at the top is this is a super simplified example because this level is copied almost directly from its predecessor. But basically, along the bottom here, you can see that the geometry from this level is almost the exact same as what the current level in the game is right now. What I removed was this little white chunk here is illusory terrain, because I realized that from a play perspective, I don't like how illusory terrain behaves. It's terrain that when you walk near it, it fades away and you can see behind it. So you would go from the first screen of a level to the second screen and have to remember, this pink line here delineates the boundary between screens. So you would see the edge of the screen, have to see, oh, there's a little leaf up there. You get to this screen and you see, oh, there's a solid wall there, but maybe it's not solid. Maybe I can bounce off of this guy and get up there. And that's just something that I modified. I got rid of the illusory terrain, so you just, bounce up and get it. You don't have to transition back to the screen to grab it. and then I kept this part of the level, and then at this last chunk here, I scrapped this because this for two reasons. I was transitioning the game over to only having 3 leaves per level because that just felt like a better pacing for things. I had lots of levels which had 3 or 5, or I think there's even one with 8 leaves in it, and it really just killed the pacing of the experience. Like, and not to say that I can just take that level and literally break it in half to make or break it into thirds to make 3 levels where once there was one big one. You know what? Let me pull that up. But yeah, so I'm constantly taking these other levels that I'd made for the game. This was it. This is the largest level that I made, and there's a full like 8 leaves in this level. And I've taken bits and pieces of this and remade them into other challenges that you're going to find in the current batch of levels now. So I guess if there's ever a lot of demand for it, I can make these levels accessible within the engine. That's pretty trivial to me. But it's, I promise that the experience you're getting is the sort of the best with the way that I'm distilling the fun down into these shorter, better cropped levels, as it were.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, like it's going somewhere, even if it's not, additional levels or something like that. So that's interesting. Thanks for showing that on the screen too. It's cool to see them side by side and how they've sort of, evolved with each other. So I asked you about pleasure. What do you think has been the most painful part so far of your developing this?
Yeah, and I touched on that a little bit the other day. I do see questions coming in chat. I don't know how much longer. Like, I'll happily answer every question that's come through in chat, but I don't know how much more time you have on your end.
Yeah, go ahead. That's
Okay.
fine. Probably maybe 15 minutes or
Okay.
something like that. I've got,
well,
yeah.
let me just address some of the things here really quickly. Lemothius, you're asking about this engine is GameMaker Studio version 1, and I think the processing, like, I'm not actually using any shaders here. This is whatever is processing. I don't know how the processing is actually handled. GameMaker sort of takes care of that. I assume that it's offloaded to the video card. The effects are not being done with shaders at all. I don't know how to write shaders. I think, okay, if there's any other questions, they're not jumping out at me. But yeah, so the most painful part of the development process was my transition to getting this game to work in a web browser. Because the way the game worked was it would every time you touched a leaf, it would sort of locally log it within a level. And then when you actually touched a tree, it would bank your progress and write to a save file. Except both in HTML and on other people's computers. This is the other thing that really threw me for a loop, was the fact that other people's computers were sandboxed to the point where you could not you couldn't save. And if you couldn't save, it meant that I wasn't logging these variables locally in the game. I was counting on the fact that the save file existed. So I had to excruciatingly go through and check every single location where I was writing to the save file. I had to rewrite the game to make it behave and work properly on a local file. And it basically means that unless I release, like, I don't know, a version of this game that is installed via a trusted vendor, like distributing it through Steam, at this point, I'm not even sure if I can make saving and loading work at all. Like, unless I distribute the game through Steam, and that's incredibly frustrating to me. And that's why I have to move on from this engine, is because it's so old that Windows doesn't trust it as a safe thing anymore, and then I can't have saving and loading in my games. Like, it's kind of disastrous.
Yeah, it's like you would add that pressure of beyond checkpoints, just having to finish it in an entire
Yeah, finish
sitting
the whole game in one sitting.
or something like that, or literally keep the the computer on or the browser on. I think like people used to do that like in like maybe I did that in Sega games or Nintendo games, or maybe I'm thinking about what are that one of those movies. Oh my god, it's escaping me on the fly now. But uh, he was playing NHL '93, I think, and refused to save it because he couldn't, or so he would just shut off the screen and let it play overnight, and then wake up and play it again because it was like the only way you could hack it. But that's off topic. You got some good questions coming in as well, like on Game Canon, I think.
Yes, yes.
They've got some of that
Um,
interesting stuff.
so I guess, if I look back at the big list of games that I've made, um, there are some games that are sort of cross canonical with others. Um, Allocate, before I heavily injected the Command and Conquer art inspiration on it, was originally supposed to be the story of people running away from the Zarnok robots from Robo's world as they invaded the planet. Um, the family in Christmas with Uncle Tom uses some of the same sprites, and with some tweaking, it could be I could narratively tie it together with the family that you see in Stroke. Um, Other than that, there is going to be an ongoing canon, not with Worlds Within Worlds, but in the game that I make after that and after that and after that. Like there are at least 4 or so other games that I have in a sort of shared world. So yeah, in that sense, there is going to be like a shared universe, a shared storyline. Um, so yes, I guess is the answer to the question.
Yeah. Wow. Um, well, I think Gabriel, I think that was all I had to ask you about. It's been really fantastic, and I also, as I mentioned Monday, really appreciate talking to you then and uh, getting to meet you. You know, on the list of things I had sent over to you, or we've been talking, is there anything else you want to say? Um, yeah, about Worlds Within Worlds or other games you developed that yeah, kind of came to mind.
Yeah, I was
During
looking through
our
the list.
conversation.
Um, I was looking through the list just before we started the interview here, and a few of the questions were to do with like text and writing, and for that reason, I was suggesting that it might be worth talking a bit more about some of my narrative games. That being, this set of 3 that I produced, all within the same sort of text engine, and you know the I guess sort of like there's also like the like general advice that you would give to other developers. I like that as a nice point to sort of end off on. Um,
Yeah, yeah. In any capacity, like for doing something like a um, text-heavy game or something like Worlds Within Worlds, or maybe we could talk about that, or even streaming. What's your advice for doing that? Because I am doing a little bit of that, and I find it absolutely terrifying still to do because I'm not used to revealing my own like sort of failures and hesitations and things like that. And again, it's just admirable to see someone kind of talking through when there's like a problem you're trying to work through in a lot of ways.
yeah, and
Yeah, and any one of those we could touch
sure,
on.
sure. Well, let's hit a few bases here. Um, the narrative games here are all drawn from some real inspiration. I was talking a little bit about this before the stream, but each one of the narrative games, Stroke in particular, was based on a memory that I had from when I was a kid, and I thought my grandmother had suffered from a stroke. It was not technically a stroke; it was something kind of adjacent to that, but I didn't remember the exact medical term. But it was just like this really intense memory of like being in the hospital, being there with my great grandfather. So my grandmother's father, and he was a really old guy at the time. Um, and he was suffering from Alzheimer's, and all he understood was that his um, daughter had been rushed to the hospital and he was panicking, and I was 12 years old trying to calm him down. And it was a like really emotionally intense experience for me. And I drew upon that when I went to write the game. And despite having some of the most dialogue, um, Stroke has more dialogue in it than either Christmas with Uncle Tom or The Little Brazier. It took me less time to write the dialogue for Stroke than either of the other two. I think I wrote the whole game in about 3 hours because I was drawing on this real life experience. So, they say to write what you know, and I think it's very good advice.
Okay.
So I think that another significant thing, like with each one of these narrative games, like another key distinction is if you look at most of my games, I'm at least trying to create something that is about the play. I'm trying to create a game that is fun. Here's a game about punching zombies with your fists. Here's a game about flying around in a helicopter that you can make it spin upside down and fly through people to grind them up on the blades. Here's a game where you jump out of a airplane and you're doing a competitive bullet hell as you fall through the sky. But these games I wanted to be about an experience that wasn't strictly about the play. With Stroke, I wanted to try to convey some of the emotional intensity of the moment that I was feeling. The main reason that I made it was because, in a small way, if in Stroke, one of the very first questions you're asked is your kid comes up to you. You're playing as the husband of a wife who's just had a stroke, and the kid comes up to you and says, "Is mommy going to be okay?" And in the game, you have a choice of what you're going to say. But what I'm hoping is that when people play this game, they will realize that, God forbid, maybe someday they will be in a situation like that, and they're going to be faced with having to think through what they're going to say. And maybe, it would be incredible to me if anyone who played my game was in some way a little bit more mentally composed, able to keep themselves calm in a stressful situation, and therefore help to keep other people calm and keep other people from panicking, because they mentally gamed out what they were going to say in these stressful and difficult situations. So that's why I made Stroke as a game. It wasn't because, oh wow, Oscar bait, look, we're going to make a game about a time the character somebody you knew in real life had a stroke. It was just about trying to convey this experience and seeing, can this help people to become more emotionally prepared for these difficult times?
Yeah. You said these two words little bit. I find for game jams, and I think we may have touched on this a bit the other day, that it's important to stay small, have some short experience, or a quick experience that someone can have that can maybe blossom later on. Is that what I'm trying to remember if that's what we sort of touched on, because I think we were talking about that you had 72 or more like 48 hours to create games like this, and you've got to think quickly. Is it about that, staying small, having that, thinking what someone can do in a reasonable amount of time, or what the experience could be in a pretty short amount of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I made Allocate, where's my design documents? On Google. Okay, well, when I made Allocate, I wish I could more easily pull it up here, but I specifically divided the game into a whole bunch of separate tiers of development. I had in mind, so here's my complete task list of everything from the programming I had to do, to the art that I had to create, to the music that I had to import, to the sound effects that I wanted to include, programming on the pause menu, any other miscellaneous stuff, up to literally updating the icon, creating screenshots, exporting, and submitting the game. And then down here is my sort of separate list of what I consider to be the minimum viable product of the game, and then a tier 1 version of the game and a tier 2 version of the game. Like, how far can I get? And that was it. I was able to get up to tier 2 in my development, and this was just based on where I was at in terms of my my time frame. I had in mind, like, okay, I know I can get at least this version of the game done. It's Saturday evening. I think I'm going to push to include manual target designation, because even if I only have a little bit more time to work on the game, I think this is going to be a really fun mechanic, and I know that I've still got a little bit more time tomorrow to finish that pause screen and maybe add in the camera shake. And again, the camera shake is something way down here in my polish category, for things that really didn't have to be in the game, like muzzle flare. Does that matter at all in the greater context of the game? No, but it looks good. And if I have time to sort of dip into the sort of passionate feeling you get that really keeps you working through projects maybe a little longer than you otherwise would. Those are little things that I made time for. And if at any point in the project I felt, I'm feeling like I'm falling a little behind, then okay, then I only make the MVP version of the game, or I only make the tier 1 version of the game. So having these features in mind that I can prioritize or cut as necessary was very helpful in being able to finish something in just a 48-hour time frame.
Oh yeah, and it hadn't occurred to me like the tiers being a really good way to just sort of check yourself, and say that this is where it is. Let me make it as best as I can, like under that monitor, if you will.
Yeah. And Sam is commenting in chat that the manual targeting is really what makes the game, and I completely agree. Like the absolute fundamental nature of the game is that you have tanks that you're allocating, or at least these turrets you're allocating power towards, and that's it. You've just got like enemies coming in and the ability to turn on turrets to shoot at the tanks. Then to try to make it a little more complex is the ability to give power to a mine so that you can rebuild turrets, or rebuild or earn points by allocating power to your spaceport so that it can launch refugees to safety. And then on top of that, of course, is the actual manual targeting, which makes the game far more engaging from a play perspective. But fundamentally, the game still would have worked without that as a function. So that's why it was down the tier 2 list. And that's really, like, you can absolutely prioritize things in a different way than this. And I knew manual target designation was going to be a fun part of the game. I probably could have put that in tier 1 and taken some of these things and put them in tier 2, but I had a feeling I was going to be able to get to at least these 3, so I wasn't worried too much about the hierarchy of it. So yeah, it was really just
yeah. No, go ahead.
Oh, all I was going to say is I was really operating from this position of, if assuming that I can get this far, what is the most fundamental layers of this game? And it starts here, adds on this, and then adds on this. And so
I think I'm going to have to base my next writing project on that tier idea. That's really fascinating, because it seems like it's more manageable. Like, it's still going to be interesting. It's just, later on, if I have more time, if I'm running up against a deadline, this might be a good way to grapple with that, or cope with it. I didn't get everything done, but it's still something, like, hopefully people want to read or engage with.
I hope so. I think that it has the, like, as long as you adopt it to your own framework, to what makes sense for you, I think it can work. Because there are entire parts of this game that I could just drop and not include, and it still felt like it would work. But obviously, I wouldn't want to be shipping with just the minimum viable product, because that would be kind of like oatmeal made with water. Like, you want the oatmeal made with milk, or you want the oatmeal made with milk and put with maple syrup on it. Like, there's going to be layers to this that actually make it an experience worth having, as opposed to, like, well, you certainly finished it. This is technically edible.
Yeah, it's like tier 3 for me would be bananas or something like that. You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
put
yeah.
like with it.
Seriously though,
Uh,
if anyone in chat, if you ever want to make oatmeal taste better, make it with milk instead of water. Tastes so
yeah,
much better. Life hacks.
yeah. Well, Gabriel, again, this was really fun. And good luck with the rest of um, uh, building worlds within worlds. And I'll look forward to kind of tuning in and chatting with everybody else. Multiple streams the next days, weeks, and things like that. It's always nice to get a notification and see what you're up to.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. It was indeed a lot of fun, and I've been very happy to answer the questions. It's been a lot of fun to think these things through.
Excellent. All right. Well, yeah. Enjoy the rest of your stream. You got a half an hour or so to
Yep.
wrap up. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Have a
good
good night.
evening.
You
Bye
too.
bye.